government officials have been repeating here, the chances of any part of Japan being hit by debris from MIR are more than 1 in 100 million. So they're really emphasizing the fact that they're just trying to take all potential precautions they can to keep the public at ease, but they don't expect anything to happen. Miles?
CNN's Rebecca McKinnon in Tokyo, and let's check in with our expert Mike Fudge, our man who understands orbital mechanics and how things return to Earth, and specifically what's happening right now with MIR. And Mike, as I understand it, the chances of MIR falling short are in the slim and none category. Is that correct?
That's probably correct, Miles. Basically, we are more concerned with something going perhaps a bit long than short. But again, to emphasize to people that the Russians have done this time and time again with just the smaller Progress ships for many, many years, and they have successfully deorbited 5 space stations before.
Mike, I'm going to cut you off. And by the way, we are looking at pictures which came down just a minute ago from the Russian space station MIR, from the Progress attached to it. And some of the last pictures, obviously, we'll see from it. Let's go to Jill Doherty at Russian Mission Control. Jill.
Yeah, and Miles, when those pictures came up on that screen, I'll tell you, every single eye was riveted on those last pictures. That is the last view from MIR. MIR, of course, alone in the sky right now, nobody aboard, and on its way to its death in the Pacific Ocean. A very riveting moment when people down who had been involved for so many years with the MIR were looking at that and looking at the last minutes of the MIR. Miles?
You know, we're looking at some pictures now shot down in the lower level from where you're standing there, Jill. And as I look through the crowd, it's jam-packed. And I'm kind of wondering how well the engineers are able to do their job given all the crush of people in there.
You know, they're pretty quiet, though. A lot of them are watching very carefully, and of course, most of the people who really are working have headphones on, earphones, so presumably they're not listening to anything that's going on around them, especially at this crucial moment.
I suspect we'll have some sort of reaction as we once again look at some of this videotape, I believe, turned around just a few moments ago. Black and white, grainy images. Nevertheless, a historical piece of footage, as it is the last bit of footage we'll see from MIR. But I imagine, I guess the term would not be celebrations, but there will be opportunities for these people to get together once everything has been completed, I suspect, Jill.
Yeah, it's probably like an Irish wake, you know, you kind of celebrate while you cry. So, and that does seem to be the mood. That's exactly what they feel. Number one, they're bringing it down, and so far without any problems.
All right.
So that's cause for celebration.
You know, I was talking to Norm Thagard earlier. Norm, you were talking about the Russian fatalism. On the one hand, they're sort of individually fatalistic. On the other hand, they are very careful about other people's safety. It almost seems like a dichotomy.
But that is the way they are. They very much are concerned with health and safety of their cosmonauts, for instance, but when it comes to their own safety, a lot less regard.
All right. We are now right near the end of this expected burn. It's supposed to last about 19 minutes. It's going to be another 5 minutes before it is complete. Take a look at this rendition of what is happening right now in space from our friends at Analytical Graphics. And at the end here, the Progress vehicle, you can see exactly what is happening as that plume spits out well, I guess that is the death burn. You're seeing it right there, animated version, but that's what's happening right now in space. Keep an eye on Russian's Mission Control site on our website. We'll have all that as part of our interactive coverage, which is going on right now on CNN.com. The AOL keyword for that is CNN. Now, as we monitor MIR's third and final burn, we are going to take a short break. Don't worry, we're going to come back and we will keep you posted with reports from our earthbound viewing stations, and we will begin with the best assignment of all, Fiji. Stay with us.
The docking of the shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station MIR came in right on schedule. Cameras on the shuttle were able to show us the MIR. Then cameras on MIR took a close look at the shuttle from above it. And then the hatches opened. And for the first time in 20 years, Americans and Russians on separate ships were shaking hands in orbit.
The voice of the late, the great John Holloman. I only wish you were here to share this moment with us. Norm Thagard, you remember him well, and also you were a much younger man just a few moments ago in that shot, huh?
Yeah, but I didn't have any more hair then than I do now. Yeah, John was a wonderful man, and I worked with him a couple of times and enjoyed it very much.
All right. Let's turn our attention now just a moment to the weather and what is going on out there in the South Pacific. There are some people who are hoping to catch a glimpse of all these activities. Some of them are paying an awful lot of money to be on a very expensive charter. Others just happen to be out there in fishing boats looking for tuna and might get quite a show indeed. For the prospects of that, let's turn it now to CNN's Karen McGinnis, who is up in the Weather Center. Karen, how's it looking?
Hey, Miles. If anybody's floating around in those roaring 40s, it is a rough ride. You need some Dramamine for sure. We've got an interesting weather picture taking place here. This is North America. We're looking at the Hawaiian Islands here, and if we were to go a little bit farther to the south there, we have New Zealand. Now we give you this animated view. Once again, New Zealand here. This is referred to as the roaring 40s. You get a lot of volatile weather systems here. If you follow any kind of the sailing races like the Whitbread race, you know that when they encounter some of these violent weather systems right across this region, boy, it really is rather treacherous. Also, we're taking a look at Tahiti. Here's Rapa, is the Rikitia, and a little bit farther to the south, this is considered that dead zone, the drop zone, or otherwise known as the impact zone, and pretty much in that zone from New Zealand over to South America to the south, out of any real shipping lanes for the most part. But there's a deep area of low pressure here, frontal system extending up right around Fiji. Then we've got double point low pressure system with kind of a shearing that takes place here. So in the middle, a little bit of low clouds, a little bit of reduced visibility, and Miles, boy, that would be a really rough ride, but I'd almost like to be there as well. Now back to you.
That might be just the antidote for seasickness, looking up at MIR as it comes in. Let's take a quick look at our 3D animation of the Russian space station MIR. What you're looking at right here is just a bit of moment of history. That is the Russian landmass, and that is the last time that the space station MIR will leave it behind. Take a look at this altitude indication right there. I don't know if you can read that at home, but it says it's already at 101 miles in altitude. That's about 60 kilometers, and or did I do that backwards? So it would be 120 kilometers. Excuse me for that. The mathematics is escaping me at this point. But in any case, it heads out over to the Pacific now, dropping very, very quickly, headed toward our Hugh Williams, who is in the lovely island of Fiji, and he's been giving us a sense of who is gathering there and what they hope to see. Hugh?
Well, Miles, yes, it's a tough assignment, but someone's got to do it. The mood here in Fiji is pretty relaxed right now. Like Karen said, the weather is, mostly clear, but there have been a lot of clouds building up this afternoon. So it's sunny and humid, and it's pretty much business as usual for most people here. There is a certain curiosity about MIR, but no one in Fiji seems that scared about it falling on their heads. Now, that might change soon when many are expected to turn their attention to the sky for a chance to glimpse MIR's final moments. You know, the deorbiting Russian space station is anticipated to cross pretty much directly over Fiji in a short while on its southerly path to destruction. And there is a possibility that it might be seen from here if the conditions are right. So people will likely be gathering here on the beach soon to see if they can see anything, and if there is anything to see, we'll let you know right away. Miles?
All right, you will be looking toward the sky. We should tell you less than 2 minutes away, and we will have the last official contact from MIR ever, the last telemetry contact, radio signal received on the ground from MIR, as MIR, taking a look at the board here, heads over Japan. The concerns that were expressed there can be allayed even as we speak, as MIR goes over Japan at a healthy altitude of 95, now 94 miles, headed down toward this zone right here in the South Pacific. Everything going according to the prescribed plan. Now, we were talking about people trying to see MIR and what they might possibly be able to, perhaps the most audacious effort to do that is an outfit called MIRReentry.com. A group of people have gathered together, put together a charter That charter is up in the air right now, orbiting in the vicinity of that drop zone. With us on the line is one of the organizers of that effort, Mark Herring. Mark, when did the plane leave?
Hey, Miles, how you doing? We left a little bit after 11 a.m. this morning here from Suva, and has been making the two planes have been making their way through the South Pacific with the refueling in Tonga. And I just spoke with them a moment ago, and they are currently in position, on station, orbiting. They're having clear skies, and they're expecting to observe the reentry phenomena at 5:45 local time. They have had continuous communications with flight control both at NASA and there in Moscow. They've seen all systems be nominal on board. All monitored systems are functioning normal. We're on schedule, and we're regular.
Mark, as we're talking here, we are looking at live pictures of Russian mission control, and these are the people who day in and day out over the past 15 years and a month have watched MIR as it has come across, most of the time with people on board, sometimes without, but have nevertheless sort of nurtured this spacecraft along, and they are just about to see it for the last time on their computer screens there. That has got to be a moment of emotion for them. Stand by there, Mark. I just got to ask you, Norm, it's an emotional moment, isn't it?
It is an emotional moment, and actually I have a picture that was taken of my own family there in Soup when the docking occurred on MIR, and it was clear that everybody in that place was very happy.
All right, Jill Doherty, you're up in the balcony, sort of hovering above all those kind of sad eyes down there on the floor. When those screens go blank, there's a certain amount of finality to that, isn't there?
There certainly is. I mean, it is over. Although, Miles, you know, a few minutes ago when everybody was riveted on those live pictures, now there's a little bit more commotion down there. People smiling, I think probably out of relief that this seems to be ending exactly as they wanted. And proof that the Russians, as one Russian told us, can really pull it together when they have to. And they were able to pull it together for this. Apparently, it looks as if it's going picture perfect.
It seems as if this burn, this rocket firing, has done exactly as expected. This is a live picture of the board. Jill Doherty is standing in front of it, and these are some of the flight controllers as they look on. Jim Oberg, this issue of MIR sort of rising above expectations seems to come back time and again. Just when you thought it was dead, it tends to surprise you. And just when you thought it might not be able to perform its last duties well, sure enough, it comes through without a hitch.
Well, that's right, Miles. There's a robustness there to the Russian space technology that has caught people by surprise again and again, including me. There are things that it can do. You think that they've done all they can. They're down to the last trick, and the last trick works. The last ditch holds. This has been a cultural tradition over there, and it's something that we have to just, gain some more respect for, because here once again, when they had to, they came through and delivered.
All right, we're going to leave it at there. We have to take a brief break here. At an altitude now of 81 miles, the MIR space station has gone through 3 successive burns tonight over the course of a series of orbits, and is on its way, by all accounts, to a watery grave in the South Pacific, completely out of harm's way. You're looking at a real-time piece of telemetry of the space station. You can see the burn is no longer happening, coming out of the rocket at the end there. The Russian space station MIR has been given its lethal dose of rocket firings, and all that remains now is to watch it go into the drink. Stay with us as we continue our coverage of MIR in its final moments.
It may not be a regularly scheduled event, but once again, for the 4th time since July, MIR's computer is in trouble, the spacecraft is adrift, and non-essential systems have been switched off to save power. Once again, the men in Russian mission control assure that, quote, everything is under control. There is, quote, nothing serious, even though 2 of the 3 components of the main computer were malfunctioning.
The computers. Source of problem, even as recently as December, they lost contact with the computer system on Mir, lost contact with the space station entirely for about 20 hours. And that was one of the big areas of concern as they approached this deorbit time. They wanted to ensure that they were able to communicate fully with the space station, obviously before they brought it in, because having it in the proper orientation was essential in order for things to go just as planned. And as we've been telling you, it appears everything has gone as planned. Here is the Russian space station Mir. Let me use the red pen, it'll come across a little better. It's passed over Russian ground stations for the last time. The screens have gone blank at Russian Mission Control, the place they call Soup. A sad moment there as they see it go off the horizon. It's gone across Japan at about 90 miles in altitude, no problems there. It continues down this line, heading this way, and is probably less than an hour away from that point right there. Altitude right now, under 70 miles. I'm joined here by Norm Thagard, U.S. astronaut, first U.S. resident of Mir. And at this altitude, the atmosphere is thickening pretty quickly, isn't it?
It is. I think we used to consider, and Jim can confirm this, perhaps 400,000 feet to be entry interface, although to get our astronaut wings, we had to get above 50 statute miles. So.
Ah, there you go. There's a little factoid for you that you can consider. Jim Oberg, who is joining us at one of the three Mir core modules that were produced. One is about to go into the drink. The other two will remain after this evening. One of them is in Star City, Russia, used for training, not any longer, of course. And this one happens to be in the Wisconsin Dells. Jim, I'm curious about that very point. What kind of stresses right now is Mir undergoing as it reaches an altitude of about 66 miles?
Oh, okay, here we are aboard the Mir. Now, you've got to beam me off here in time, Miles.
Okay, we'll do that
what's
for
happening
you.
is we're starting to build up around the Mir, the shock wave, the shock front in the atmosphere that's starting to heat up. And it's this heat, this re-entry heating, which is caused by this shock front of air being built up in front of the speeding spacecraft that creates this red glow, the one you see in your animations. That's starting to build up now. The solar panels are starting to whip back and forth. And probably there goes one right now. It's just torn off. The others will be tearing off now because the forces are just whipping them back and forth until they can no longer, until they break. The rest of the modules are going to start to be slowing down. The big four ones up there in that crisscross section are like the back end of a shuttlecock. So we're going to bend around and go back end forward into the deeper atmosphere and start slowing down at more tremendous deceleration. 5 Gs, 8, 10, 15 Gs as we ram into the atmosphere. At that point, all this material you see around me is going to start tearing loose from the walls, flying into the back of the spacecraft, right into your camera, right into your view. Even the paneling here will be tearing loose and piling up. All the wastewater on the outer skins, all the sludge is going to go sloshing back to the back end. Finally, the hull's going to crack open, the pieces are going to break loose, and by then, of course, we're going to be gone.
All right, Jim Oberg, we'll beam you out. Don't worry. We're at 62 miles. Let's take it to Mike Fudge with ITT Industries, who's an expert in all of this. And Mike, one of the things that I've been reading a little bit about is, of course, 5 of the 6 major modules on Mir, the big ones, are still pressurized. One was the Spectre module. It was involved in that collision. It is not. The fact that it's pressurized, how does that change the way things will re-enter? Will there be explosions associated with those bursting?
I wouldn't say explosions as such, Miles, but you will definitely have a release of air which may cause some spinning of the structure. In the larger view, that won't really influence what survives and what doesn't because there's so much randomness involved in this anyway. But obviously at that moment you will get some torquing of the structures around and some very slight deviation off what had been a nominal flight path.
All right, and once again, as we try to sort of decipher what's on Mir and what is likely to survive, just give us the basic rule of thumb. The heavier the metal, the more dense the metal, the more likely it is to survive. Is that an accurate statement?
Again, the denser the metal, the higher the melting temperature of the metal, the more likely it is to survive. Ironically, we see sometimes very light things surviving because they slow down very quickly. Those spheres which Jim has talked about are quite often titanium or stainless steel. They will come down relatively unscathed. Perhaps a slight bit of melting here or there, but even aluminum, which we normally think of as just crisping, that's because we normally think of aluminum as thin. If you have a large large piece of aluminum, such as in a film vault, then, as was seen in Skylab, large pieces of aluminum can survive to the surface.
All right, Mike Fudge, let's put it on hold for just a moment. MIR is now at an altitude of 57 miles. You can see it's approaching the islands of the Polynesian islands. Fiji is in this neighborhood right about here. And there's the end of the line. We expect that that's exactly where MIR will reach the end of a 2.2 billion mile journey. We're not done with our journey here tonight because we're going to make sure we stay with this all throughout the end, make sure MIR is in safe and has reached its watery grave without any consequences to property or to human beings. And we'd like to hear from some people who might have seen it along the way. So stay tuned to CNN as MIR falls to Earth.
For Japanese television reporter Toyohiro Akiyama, it was the assignment of a lifetime, an assignment to space. The Tokyo Broadcasting System, or TBS, paid the Soviet Union a reported $12 million to launch Akiyama to its Mir space station, where he did live reports. Akiyama, who spent a year and a half in rigorous training for the assignment, is the first Japanese and the world's first journalist ever in space.
9 days in space, the first journalist in space, Akiyama. MIR, right now, let's give you an update. An altitude of 49 miles, dropping like a rock, as it were. Let me show you on the chart here right where it is. That's the space station MIR, and that's the end of the line. Not much further to go. As a matter of fact, by most accounts, it should be at the end of the line in about 15 minutes or so. That's our best estimation of what is happening. Let's take a look at some animation we have, because this computer graphic is not showing you exactly what's going on. This takes you back a little bit to the burn, which we were talking about a while ago, which happened over Russia. And as Jim Oberg was pointing out to us as he was graphically depicting what it would be like to be inside, this is what would happen, or what is happening, we should say, even as we speak to the Russian space station Mir. Actually, at an altitude of 48 miles, much of this might have already happened. You saw the solar arrays breaking off, the antennas breaking off, and then as the plasma heats up around those 6 main modules, they all break apart, forming separate sort of cometary trails, an impressive man-made meteor. Jim Oberg, don't you sort of wish you could see it?
Well, Miles, I sure would like to see it, but you know, people see this occasionally all around the world at a smaller scale. Satellites and rocket stages do come in, do create fireballs. Often they make it in local news, they make it into the UFO magazines, because people see these white lights moving in apparent intelligent formation right across the sky horizontally. In fact, they are just pieces, just like we saw in the graphics, of a rocket, of a satellite. So these do happen. This one is about the biggest ever, but this kind of thing happens all the time. And it also happens naturally. More than a dozen objects bigger than MIR fall to Earth every year from outer space. So we definitely are in a falling rock zone on this planet, both man-made and natural.
All right, let's take it over to Mike Fudge and sort of elaborate on that point. Mike, as I understand it, in the years of the space age, some 40 years now, just about every single day on average of that space age, a piece of man-made junk has fallen on the planet, and at least once a week one of those pieces is big, say about a ton. So this is going on all the time. We just don't know about it, do we?
That's correct, Miles. Maybe not from the very first days, but definitely since the 1960s onward, this happens every day. To put it in perspective, weight-wise, MIR has a mass of about 135 kilograms. That is presently about the amount of mass that comes in every year. Back in the 80s, it was more. It was several 100,000 kilograms per year. So whereas we're getting this all in one big show tonight, that's about how much we can expect over 1 year's time right now.
All right, give us a sense of what's going on right now, because the graphic which we're showing you is a bit misleading in the sense that at 45 miles in altitude, there is a big streak going on. And let's take it right now to Hugh Williams. As a matter of fact, Mike, you stand by there for a moment. Hugh Williams on the island of Fiji. What are you seeing, Hugh?
Miles, just the most unbelievable, incredible show I just saw right now out on the beach in front of my hotel. I'm breathless from seeing it. Basically, the MIR came streaking across the horizon in 5, 6, 7, maybe 9 pieces, making a huge sort of golden trail through the sky. The people that are gathered out here in Nandi here, watching it, were just in awe, seeing it stream across the sky. Just basically a collection of very bright golden-colored lights absolutely tearing across the sky. Probably would have taken less than a minute, maybe a minute and a half, and it looked very low. Now, the other thing that's just unnerved me slightly is some thunderstorm nearby, which is making some loud noises. I don't believe that's related to what I just saw, but really an unbelievable show, and as that thing went streaking past here, Miles.
Wow, that is quite a report, Hugh. Let me ask you this. Is it possible it wasn't thunder? Could it have been a sonic boom from perhaps some of those pieces moving so quickly?
There is a distinct possibility, but Miles, right behind me there's a gigantic thunderstorm off in a different direction. So I could not tell you if that noise is related directly to what I saw, but the light show in the sky was phenomenal. I mean, like nothing I've ever seen before.
All right. Go ahead.
Rocketing across the horizon.
Unbelievable. Now we're taking a look at a live picture. This is Mission Control outside Moscow, the place they call Korolev. You were looking at the map there. That little blip was getting into the box that they call the area that they were aiming for, the debris impact zone. There you see those mission controllers looking at their screens. Of course, the screens aren't telling them so much anymore. They're not getting any real-time telemetry. Everything now is breaking down to that site in the Pacific that they were aiming for, now at an altitude of some 41 miles. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we're going to be talking to all of our people along those Pacific Islands to see if we can get some similar reports and similar eyewitness accounts as to what is happening, as MIR now is squarely inside that zone where that debris field will begin. And we will also talk to one of Norm Thagard's crewmates who is standing by at Russia Mission Control. Stay with us as MIR falls to Earth, even as we speak. It's the end of the road for the Russian space station Mir. Take a look at this live telemetry, a 3D representation of what's going on right now. Upper left of your screen, that's the altitude as we speak, 27 miles and falling quickly. The space station not intact as we see it right now. That is the one thing that is inaccurate with this diagram. As a matter of fact, we've had some eyewitness accounts that it has split apart and created an incredible fireworks display over some of the southern Pacific islands. In particular, the island of Fiji, where CNN's Hugh Williams just saw the light show of his life. Hugh, did you hear anything associated with it?
Miles, just while you were in the break, I was able to hear what distinctly sounded to me like the sonic booms associated with the MIR as it went overhead. There were, like I described before, several pieces, perhaps 5 large fragments, which in front of my eyes fell apart into several more fragments. And it was several minutes, not sure exactly how many minutes, before the sonic booms could be heard, but they were quite distinct and loud. So that happening at the same time as a thunderstorm in the background is quite a show down here in Fiji.
Quite an experience. I'm sure it's one you won't forget too soon. Hugh, I got to ask you, did you get any videotape of it?
Well, Miles, to tell you the truth, I got the whole thing on tape. So my next mission is to get the pictures to you so you can see
Hugh,
what I saw. But
Hugh, how quickly
like I
can
said,
you?
Pretty spectacular.
I think we might dismiss you to get you to an uplink as quickly as possible. Jim Oberg has a question for you, Hugh, before you go to feed that tape, because we're dying to see it. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Hugh. Great luck, great report. You said a yellowish color for the objects. That yellowish color is what we see. Yes, you saw a yellowish or golden color to the dots.
Yeah, it was.
The yellow
I was filming while I was watching the object, so I saw them through a color viewfinder in my camera, but a very goldenish, perhaps a little bit silvery, fireballs, basically, not leaving a huge trail, more like a sparkler being whipped through the air. And there was no smoke trail that I saw, but the speed and just the size of the object was amazing. It's like something out of a science fiction movie.
It was still daylight there, so you probably wouldn't see much of the trail. We see the space shuttles when they come in over Houston sometimes, about 40 miles up. 6 or 8 minutes later, the sonic boom reaches us, and they also leave a golden yellow trail behind them, which is a special kind of oxygen in the upper ionosphere. So, great report.
One thing I wanted to mention, if I could just jump in here for a moment, was that I was alongside one of the organizers of the observation trip who mentioned to me that he believed this D-orbit was somewhat lower than they anticipated. So I don't know if you have accurate, updated information about where the debris is falling or has fallen, but it did seem rather low in the sky.
All right, let's bring you up to date on that, because as Hugh was speaking, you couldn't see it, and Jim, you couldn't see it, but basically the graphical representation that we had of the Russian space station Mir, through the courtesy of analytical graphics, simply disappeared from the screen. I'm going to take it over to Hank Grimbowski and ask him, what does that mean? Is it over?
Well, yeah, as far as we're concerned, yeah, it's over. As he said, it seemed like the burn went a little hot. That basically is what that graphic shows. It's crashed a little bit earlier than they had expected, but...
well, all right, so decipher for those of us who aren't rocket scientists. The burn was a little hot. It just had a little more oomph than expected?
Yeah, exactly. They burned a little bit harder. They produced a little bit more change in velocity, and so it went down faster and sooner than they thought it was going to.
All right, so can we fairly accurately say that the end has happened for Mir?
Pretty much. There may be some stuff floating through the atmosphere that kind of like leaves in a wind, something like that, but the big chunks are probably down, yeah.
All right, I think you have now officially heard it here first at a time of 12:58 a.m. Eastern Time. Let's see, that would be about 0600 almost GMT. Norm Thagard, I think that's the end of the line for Mir. It's a moment to consider, isn't it? It
is. It really is.
All right. We also have joining us from Russian Mission Control a man who you flew with on the Russian space station, Mir, Gennady Strikalov. And Mr. Strikalov, and we're going to do this through a translator, so we'll take it slowly. I guess I should offer you condolences. Is that accurate to say?
Well, to some extent it's true. I accept condolences.
What are your thoughts about Mir?
Entire century epoch in the space research. And I think that we will number of times will recall even having the up-to-date, the most novel space research and achievements.
Is this a sad moment, sir, for the Russian space program?
Hold on a sec.
Yeah. Are you okay? Should I keep going?
The Mir station is a special.
Okay.
Not yet. It's a big school. Many cosmonauts and astronauts from various countries had to experience through Mir station. And of course, the significance of this schooling you cannot over-appreciate. The orbit station Mir was proudly flying around the Earth and with dignity is accomplishing its service life. Falling into the Pacific Ocean without any hurt to anybody.
And we can all be glad that that is the case. Mr. Strikalov, we have with us here a former crewmate of yours, Norm Thagard, and he'd like to say a few words to you. Go ahead, Norm.
Gennady, мой старый друг, привет.
Norm Taggart, здравствуй.
Hello, Norm Taggart.
How are you, Norm?
I'm doing well, Gennady. I wish either I were there with you or you here with me tonight.
Norm,
what kind of emotions and feelings you experience while you hear that MIR station has demised?
Sadness, Gennady. I'm sorry to see it go and wish that we could meet again on the MIR station, but I guess we can't do that now.
Norm, we got some hopes to get together again at the future station with the name MIR number 2.
Let's do it.
Do you believe it's possible?
Можно, да.
I'd like to dream to be your crewmate because our work, the work we had, it was rather successful. It was up to benchmarks.
I would agree with that, and Gennady, it was a wonderful time for me, and I really enjoyed your friendship.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for sharing that moment with all of us. Two old crewmates getting together at a sad moment, a moment where they have an opportunity to reminisce a little bit about some historic days gone by. The MIR space station is no more, and as best we can tell, it has fallen into the Pacific without causing harm to anyone or anything. Stay with us as our coverage continues.
Was damaged in the collision. As Air Inspector rushed out, the crew heard a hissing noise and hurriedly sealed off the module to prevent a further drop in pressure in the rest of the space station.
Welcome back to our coverage of the fall of MIR to Earth. And we can now put that in the past tense. It's now, by my watch, been about 8 minutes since the Russian space station MIR went into the drink in the South Pacific, exactly where the Russians wanted to put it. As best we know, no one or no thing was injured or harmed by it, and the space station is no more. Let's take a look at some animation as to what happened over the South Pacific just a little while ago. We've already had an eyewitness account which would bear this out. This animation was quite prescient. Hugh Williams, our man on Fiji, said it was a stunning sight as the Russian space station flew overhead, streaking across with perhaps as many as 9 fireballs all across the sky, accompanied by a series of sonic booms. What you're seeing here is what was the prelude to that as the solar arrays and the antennas split off, and then the 6 key major modules, each of them weighing about 20 tons, split off, ruptured, and then melted and burned and fell toward the Earth. The estimates were beforehand that as much as 20 to 40 tons of MIR would survive. Of course, we'll never know the answer to that. Mike Fudge, it sure would be nice if we could know that. I'm sure that people who study what you like to study like to get that kind of data. There's no way to do it, is there?
Well, that's the very crux of the matter, isn't it, Miles? You want to put these things down in a safe place, which means over the broad ocean area, but then you can never really recover the material to find out if all of your calculations and assumptions were correct.
All right, but there is the possibility, of course, that some pieces might actually float to the surface, some of those tanks we are talking about.
That's very true.
Jim Oberg, you were talking about that a little while ago. Jim Oberg is sitting inside not just a replica, a real MIR core module. It's just one that never got off the ground. Jim, what would happen if somebody in Chile the next couple of days, and the prevailing currents, by the way, I should tell you, do flow from west to east. Somebody in Chile were to go out to the beach and all of a sudden a tank or a little piece of something that looked a little odd washed up. Would he or she have struck the lotto?
Well, if these tanks, and some of them are floating in the water right now, and I fully expect that several dozen of these are out there now on the water, finding them is certainly a matter of chance. There's a fishing fleet out there, they're alert, they're looking for them, and if they do eventually wash ashore along some beach, someone can pick them up. The issue is, of course, who owns them? Now, by international law, and there are treaties about this, those are properties of the Soviet government or of the Russian government. In practice, as pieces have been picked up around the world with Russian or Cyrillic lettering on them, People have written to the Russian embassies in those countries asking for them. The Russians, not wanting to be liable for any danger or damage, have just disclaimed any knowledge and not wanted them back. So in practice, whoever finds them has a clear legal title to them and could sell them if they could prove they really did come from MIR. I think it's just as likely we're going to see some fake MIR pieces showing up in the next couple of weeks, as well as genuine pieces.
Already the hoaxes have begun. I guess that's probably safe to say.
Well, it's not just hoaxes too, Miles, because there's a lot of junk. Sadly, there's lots of junk floating on the ocean, even at this distant part, South Pacific. Lots of stuff from people who use the ocean as their toilet. So there's lots of things down there that people will pick up, may wonder, honestly think they may be from MIR. It would take some investigation to find out. And so there will probably be some genuine mysteries and ambiguities for some things that are being found floating on the water down there.
It ends in a mystery. Jill Doherty there at Mission Control in Moscow, just having had a few moments witnessing Gennady Strakalov talk with his former crewmate, Norm Thagard. A lot of emotion there, isn't there?
A lot, there really is. You know, these guys worked with each other and became friends with each other, and they're very devoted to each other and devoted to the space program. They kind of think of themselves as really citizens of the world when they're up there, and were treated as such, and I think that has continued. You could tell the emotion in his face as he was talking to his buddy in the States. And then here, you know, Miles, as this has been happening, all of a sudden lots of flash bulbs going off and people taking pictures of each other in front of the screen showing the last minutes of the MIR. Also a very touching time for these people, too. Several of them had flown on the MIR themselves and were down here getting their pictures taken as their spaceship was sent into the ocean.
Miles? Jill, you know, as you're talking there, we're seeing some of the previous crews of MIR projected up on that screen behind you.
Right.
And that's got to be a moment. I'm sure many of those people are present there, many of their families, many of their friends, certainly their co-workers. I see the cameras. It's got to be such a grab bag of emotions. On the one hand, for gosh sakes, take a moment to pat yourself on the back. Job well done, folks. On the other hand, there is no tomorrow, is there?
Yeah, I was wondering whether people would cry, and actually I only saw one woman who had a few tears in her eyes, but most of the people seemed to think exactly that. Job well done. 15 years, you know, living longer than it was ever expected, about 3 times longer than it was supposed to live. And they talk about it like a human being, you know, it died, it lived. And that's how I think they will think of it. Also, they really do feel that what they did, the Russians on MIR, taught the rest of the world how to deal with long-term time in space. They showed people how you can exist in space, how you can get the components out, and if you look at the ISS, very similar to MIR in many ways. So, as they said, it was a school. It was a school that taught people in the rest of the world how to live in space.
Yes, I can concur with that. I mean, you look at that International Space Station, and really it's just an updated MIR knockoff. Everything they're doing up there is based on MIR principles. Norm Thagard, there's a bit of stoicism there. She said she saw only one person crying. That's part of the Russian character, isn't it?
It is part of the Russian character, but I think clearly Gennady was saddened by this, and I am too, really.
If you had the opportunity to be there right now and communicate more fully with them, what would you offer as words of comfort for them? And I guess that's another way of saying, write me a little page of the legacy of MIR.
Well, I'd tell him things I really believe, which is, I think you folks did a wonderful job with that station. It served its purpose. It did very well, and you can be proud of it.
All right, Norm Thagard, the first U.S. resident of MIR, had an opportunity to have a little reunion there, sort of an electronic reunion, and sharing a moment. We're all sharing a moment as we watch the Mission Control Center there in Moscow offering themselves some congratulations, but saddened congratulations with the passing of a space station that's been a part of their lives for so many years. We're going to continue our coverage. Stay with us for more as we continue following MIR's demise.
Once the fire broke out, back behind me, the master alarm went off, of course. The smoke filled the station. The smoke was immediate. It was dense. Where I was sitting, I could see basically the 5 fingers on my hand. We immediately went to the oxygen breathing device, and without that, I don't think you would have been able to breathe.
Just to recap for you, the third time was a charm for the Russian Aviation and Space Agency. They pushed the buttons that fired a rocket as the Russian space station Mir flew over the Russian landmass. That rocket fired for about 20 minutes. It was the third of a series of burns over the course of the past 5.5 hours. And that burn did the trick. It sent the Russian space station on its way to a watery grave somewhere inside this red box. As you can see, this charting software that we've been having, satellite software tracking capability, no more Mir to show you, just the box where we anticipate a fairly large debris field has rained down on it, out of harm's way, causing no harm to anyone or anything that we know of. An eyewitness, CNN's Hugh Williams, who was on the island of Fiji as Mir streaked across in its final moments, indicated he saw a spectacular light show accompanied by sonic booms, a light show like he had never seen before, something he said that took his breath away. Now, he was able to capture that moment on videotape, and even as we speak, we're getting him to a satellite uplink. We should have some videotape here at CNN within the next couple of hours. We'll, of course, be sharing that with you as soon as we get it here. So, the Russians did what they said they would do, despite the fact that the space station Mir, some parts of it, the core itself, was 15 years old and at times ailing and failing. It did come through, and it did what it was supposed to do when it needed to. In some sense, perhaps, these were Mir's finest hours, in some sense. It's a sad moment for the space world, the devotees of space, enthusiasts. Mir was a spacecraft that accomplished a lot over 15 years. But I guess, like all good things, it must come to an end. We'll be back with more. We'll check in with all of our experts one last time as we continue our coverage of Mir falling to Earth.
Shortly after midnight Moscow time, the big Soviet rocket lifted in orbit the base module of what is intended as a permanent manned space station. The launch was first shown to the Soviet public on television almost 12 hours after it happened. A statement by TASS, the official news agency, said the space station was launched in honor of next week's Communist Party Congress and was named Mir, the Russian word for peace.
Mir's birthday, February 20th, 1986. Its date of its demise, March 23rd, the year 2001, just a little while ago, about a half an hour ago. Let's get some final thoughts from all of our esteemed guests, and let's begin right here with Hank Grabowski, who is with Analytical Graphics. Just a quick word from you, Hank, on how accurate what we've seen on that screen has been, and whether we have a fairly good sense of where Mir went down.
Well, according to what we've heard from Mission Control, we were expecting that it landed somewhere around 40 degrees latitude south, west longitude of between 160 and 140. According to our calculations, it landed around 45 degrees south latitude and around 150 degrees west longitude.
All right, so some precision there. Thanks to you folks at Analytical Graphics for that. Let's take it over to Jill Doherty, who is at Russian Mission Control, the place they call Soup. Jill, some final thoughts from you.
Well, Miles, I'd say that there were high points and low points in this, but ultimately, even though the space program, the Russian space program, has financial problems and many other problems, the brain power that put this together is still alive and well.
All right. Mike Fudge, ITT Industries, a man who understands a lot about orbital mechanics. You're a scientist, but you're also a human being. We've witnessed the end of an era, haven't we?
Yes, we have, Miles. It is a bit sad looking back on it. I mean, when this launched, just to put things in perspective, I was a freshman in college at Virginia Tech, so you know, my experience is a little different from Norm's, but I could definitely see the emotion in Norm and in Commander Strikalov. But let's get this right. Now the Russians are 6 for 6 with safely deorbiting space stations in a controlled fashion into the Pacific.
All right, that's a good point to end with you on that. Let's go to Jim Oberg in the Wisconsin Dells. Jim, you have looked at first the Soviet space program, now the Russian space program for as long as anybody. Put this in perspective. Write the first draft of the first page of the history of MIR and how it relates to the history of the Russian space program.
Well, the MIR that's around me now, this model is full of ghosts of people who really pioneered the kind of things we need to do to get beyond Earth orbit into interplanetary flight. And now this whole spacecraft itself is a ghost. And maybe in that form it'll travel much farther than even it did in real life, because it's going to be reminding us what can be done, what can be overcome when it comes to facing the challenges of space.
Norm Thagard, it says a lot about the way the Russians think about their space program, their philosophy in general about life is sort of wrapped up in MIR, isn't it?
It is, and I'm saddened probably as much for my Russian colleagues as for the demise of MIR. We're now truly in the International Space Station era, but I'm heartened by the fact that space exploration continues.
All right. Well, I can say as a reporter, I'm saddened to see the Russian space station go, and if nothing else, it was a compellingly human story, despite the fact it was all about hardware. It was also about human beings, about adventure, about overcoming long odds. And I, for one, will miss it, and I will miss the story. That completes our special report. My thanks to Norm Thagard, to Mike Fudge, Jim Oberg, the folks from Analytical Graphics, and our Moscow Bureau Chief, Jill Doherty. I'm Miles O'Brien at the CNN Center. Thanks for joining us.
The big Soviet rocket lifted in orbit, MIR, the Russian word for peace.
Groundwork for an astounding partnership with the U.S.
Welcome, welcome!
It became my home, and I was pretty comfortable in it.
From time to time, they'd send us messages that would say things like, "Guys, all the Catholics in Rome are praying for you." When you receive a message like that, of course you are touched by it. We understood that they know about us down there.
2-3 foot flames, sparks flying. It was a very, very serious fire.
MIR slammed into a cargo supply ship.
Russian commanders suffering heart problems, unable to.
The computer on the Russian space station MIR has shut down.
MIR rolled out of control.
The space station have gone up to 100 degrees.
These have always existed. Such is life. This is normal.
Another Monday, another MIR malfunction.
Well, of course, it's not quite normal.
So are you sending our astronauts on a suicide mission?
No, ma'am.
We've got one other gift for Sasha and Vasily. We're making them honorary 84 members with a little hat that shows our patch. Then we got Elena coming in with the traditional bread and salt.
The MIR station has, even in the worst economic times that they've experienced in the last few years, it's still been something they could point to and say, hey, in spite of all our problems, we still have the shining example of Russian capability.
The experience of MIR, it's a foundation for International Space Station and any joint projects.
Got a lot of bad press, some deserved, some not deserved, but it was a remarkable technical accomplishment nonetheless, and I'm sorry to see it go.
Moment on one hand to say goodbye to MIR. On the other hand, we have to progress further and old things go away and new things arise. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. До свидания, до свидания.
Weekdays 3 Eastern on CNN.
MIR falls to earth, scaffolding falls at the site of the Oscars, and the Dow falls 300 points before the bounce. The news begins now. Tonight, going out in a blaze of glory, a live update on MIR's fiery end. And at a San Diego school, a shotgun and a shootout.
I dialed the school and it was busy, and I was in the car and we were over here. I cannot tell you the panic.
These kids don't know what they're doing.
This is CNN Tonight. From the CNN Center in Atlanta, Catherine Calloway.
Good evening, everyone. MIR is the story of the moment as people all over the world waited for its arrival to Earth tonight. CNN space correspondent Miles O'Brien has been following the Russian space station on its final journey into the South Pacific, where it apparently crashed a short while ago. Miles, a bittersweet moment. Nice that it went as planned, but sad. Hard to imagine the space program without MIR.
Big mix of emotions, Catherine, but we can all be happy that it went off in an uneventful manner. The Russians said they would do it one way, and they did it that way. A series of 3 critical engine firings over a 5.5-hour period did in fact bring the 140-ton MIR space station down exactly where they wanted to do it. Let's take a look at some of the pictures which came in from Mission Control out throughout the evening. As you said, a bittersweet moment for many of these people. They have been coming in and out of this control center now for more than 15 years, shepherding their spacecraft through 86,000 orbits, 2.2 billion miles of travel. As a matter of fact, if MIR had been heading in one straight line, it would have reached the planet Uranus. Instead, it went around and around and around the planet, and finally it sort of ran out of gas. The Russians did not have the money to keep it flying. Many of its systems were failing, and so the decision was made to bring it down to its watery grave, something that happened now about 37 minutes ago. Let's take a look at some of the animation. This is what happened essentially over the South Pacific as MIR came into contact with the thicker portions of the atmosphere. There you see the rocket burn from the Progress vehicle, which was attached to the end, the vehicle which was to bring it down to an orderly, controlled entry. Exactly what happened. As it reached the atmosphere, the thicker portions of the atmosphere, it heated up quickly, and the antennas, the solar arrays, would be the first to have broken away, and then shortly thereafter, as it got closer to the surface, the modules, the principal modules, 6 of them weigh 20 tons each, broke apart, split apart, and broke into, by one witness's account, RCNN's Hugh Williams, 9 distinct comet trails. Let's listen to his eyewitness account.
Just the most unbelievable, incredible show I just saw right now out on the beach in front of my hotel. I'm breathless from seeing it. Basically, the MIR came streaking across the horizon in 5, 6, 7, maybe 9 pieces, making a huge sort of golden trail through the sky. The people that are gathered out here in Nandi here, watching it, were just in awe, seeing it stream across the sky.
That was probably the highlight of the evening tonight, hearing that report from Hugh Williams as he saw this spectacular display. Of course, the highlight is, in some sense, a low light. Norm Thagard was the first U.S. astronaut to spend some time aboard MIR, the first of 7 U.S. astronauts to have that claim, have that little bit of accomplishment on their resume. Thanks for being with us. He's been walking us through this whole process. And Norm, MIR is no more. Let's look ahead for the Russian space program. It's not exactly a great picture, is it?
Well, I don't think it's all that bad either, because they are full partners in International Space Station, and as you see the scheme of things, you'd have 2 Americans and a Russian commander, or 2 Russians and an American commander, so they're still playing a major role.
Let's go back to Hugh Williams for a moment in that eyewitness account. He said shortly thereafter in another a telephone dispatch to us that he heard a series of explosions sort of after the streaks came by. What would you attribute that to?
That's the sonic boom from the major components, because you do have that shock wave. It takes it a while to reach them, but just like a supersonic aircraft, those pieces generate a sonic boom.
So those pieces coming in at many times faster than a speeding bullet, literally, they slow down very quickly. That's what causes the heating. Anybody's guess as to how much debris is out there. Do you suspect that on the shores of Chile we'll be seeing some pieces of Mir, or what are claimed to be pieces of Mir, washing up in the coming weeks?
Yeah, probably. From what we heard from Jim Oberg, these kinds of tanks that will float survive all the time, and an excellent chance that some of them will be recovered somewhere.
All right, Norm Thagard, former U.S. astronaut, former occupant of Mir, had an opportunity to talk to one of his crewmates just a little while ago, and we appreciate you being with us every step of the way as Mir has met its end. We should tell you that Hugh Williams, the person on the line there, did have a video camera and captured that moment on tape. He is fast on his way to an uplink, a satellite uplink, to get us those images. The moment we get them here at CNN, we will, of course, be sharing them with you. Catherine.
Miles, that should be a spectacular show. I hope the video makes it soon. I want to disagree with you, though, quickly about what the highlight of the night was. While Williams' report was great, I thought the exchange between Norm and the Russian cosmonaut, the commander, his roommate on Mir, was an incredible moment on live television to see the emotion between these two gentlemen. Norm, what was it like at that moment speaking with him?
Well, I felt a bit older, to tell you the truth, because as long as Mir still existed, I could say, well, gee, I was young when I flew that, sort of. It's gone now, so I can't rely on that. But Gennady was a tremendous friend. He was always helpful to me throughout my whole stay on Mir, and I really do regret that I couldn't either be there with him or him here with us tonight.
As he said, it's not over yet. There's still the space station ahead. Maybe, you never know. You could be roommates again.
Could be.
And Miles, quickly, let me ask you one quick question before we go.
One proviso that I want to be there with them.
Oh,
with the
all
camera,
right.
if you don't mind.
There's no doubt.
All right.
How big of the pieces of debris were expected to fall?
Well, who knows? Some of those docking rings, which are, the diameter, would be about at least 10 feet, maybe 6 feet for some of the docking rings.
Some of them, maybe more like
They
5.
potentially could survive intact. That has happened in the history of debris impacts in the past. Anything that's made of something besides aluminum, either stainless steel or titanium, those are the kinds of things that are more likely to survive. And then those spherical fuel tanks, they're likely to make it. They're about that big, about the size of a desk globe. So I would say generally, though, most of the pieces will be very, very small.
Well, we can only hope. All right, Miles O'Brien, incredible coverage tonight with you and Norm Thagard. Thank you very much. You're taking a look now at the newest pictures coming in of Mir falling to Earth in the South Pacific. This video just in to CNN. Let's take a look. As we told you less than an hour ago, Mir took its dive to Earth. That was a final burn during re-entry. The ailing space station ended up in the South Pacific. You've just seen the first video of that. I'm Catherine Calloway, and we'll bring you more information as it becomes.
Yes, it's true.
What was this about sleep?
I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
That's all right, I don't mind a bit.
Okay, you got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar.
Are you getting a TV picture now, Houston?
Neil, yes, we are getting a TV picture. You're in our field of view now.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for